All right, it's time for another episode of Drew's Book Reviews. Today we are going to be talking about The Expanse. That's right, The Expanse, one of my favorite sci-fi book series that I have read in a long time. Today we are going to be talking about Book 5 in The Expanse, Nemesis Games by James S.A. Corey. So if you want to know what I have to say about Nemesis Games, stay tuned because that's coming right up here on Drew's Book Reviews. Alright, so let's talk about Nemesis Games by James S.A. Corey. Before we get into the book review, however, make sure that you hit that like button, comment, and subscribe. And join me down on the Discord and follow me on my Bookstagram. I'll have that linked below. Anyway, let's talk about Nemesis Games. So please keep in mind that this is the 5th book in the Expanse series. If you have not read books 1, 2, 3, and 4, you may find that there are some spoilers in this review for those previous books. I will do my best to keep my review of Nemesis Games spoiler free. But if you've watched my other reviews, you know that I am absolutely loving this series. The crew of the Rocinante have been through just an insane amount of crazy stuff, starting from the beginning when they first obtained the Rocinante, barely surviving that experience, to having to deal with the proto-molecule, Medina Station, planets blowing up, intergalactic war, numerous firefights and battles. It's just insane. Now, what's really awesome about this series of The Expanse so far, that I am absolutely loving, with this series, the entire world or universe or solar system, whatever you want to call it, has basically been divided up into 3 separate groups of people. I guess you could think of 3 nations. You got Earthers, you got Martians, and you got the Belters, or the OPA, the Outer Planet Alliance. And this has been absolutely divided society and future human civilization. And contention has been brewing. Of course, Mars initially being a settlement of Earth. They want their independence. Belters, who basically live their entire life in micro or extremely low gravity, have their own unique culture that has been established through that experience and growing up in that type of society in the Outer Planets Alliance. And Earthers, of course, being from Earth and having Luna on Earth and all that good stuff. So dividing has basically been, or society has been basically split into these 3 separate groups of society. What's really awesome about the crew of the Rocinante is that they are representative of all of it. You got two people from Earth, 1 from Mars, and 1 Belter. So Naomi being the Belter, you got Alex, who is the Martian, and you've got, of course, Holden and Amos, who are the Earthers on the crew of the Rocinante. So there's 4 of them there, and they've been through a lot together, but they've worked together to hold the crew together and basically become like family. And through it all, they have survived so much. And now we have Nemesis Games. Nemesis Games, basically, at this point, they've survived by working together as a cohesive unit and surviving. But ultimately, the question is, can they survive on their own? What happens when they're split? And keeping in mind that there is this big division that has come to the solar system, mostly with the Outer Planets Alliance and the Inners, as they're referred to for Mars and Earth. They're called, the OPA calls them the Inners. So, and of course, we have the Ring Gate, which has been discovered as well, this gate to all these other worlds, and the Outer Planets Alliance is starting to feel left out because they're a society, they're a culture that has grown up in microgravity or no gravity at all. They can't survive gravity. Their physical structure is not capable of handling gravity as a result of that. So with all these new worlds opened, the OPA, or the Outer Planets Alliance, they fear that they're going to become the discards of society and just tossed aside, no longer needed, having no further purpose for their cultural identity. And they fear that they will be left behind because there's so many more worlds, whereas before they mined the asteroids for the ice and everything else to sustain worlds like the moons of the solar system or Mars. That was their purpose, to obtain resources from the solar system to survive. And now there's planets full of them and they're no longer needed. That's their fear. So they've launched this attack or this war against the Inners, Mars and Earth. So basically, interplanetary war has essentially broken out. And we have Marco Anaris, who is this terrorist who is using this stealth technology to bombard Earth and launch this massive wide-scale attack. I'm trying to be vague, so I don't want to give away spoilers if you haven't read the book or watched the TV show. And, you know, I have to say, I've just finished the last episode of season 5 of The Expanse the day before I filmed this video, and there's just one scene in this book. Actually, before we get to that, let's just talk a little bit more about what's going on in this book. So, as I mentioned before, the crew of the Rocinante had to work together to survive, and they've become like family. But now they're all split up. Each member of the crew has to go and do their own thing. Alex has gone back to Mars in an attempt to reunite with his long-lost wife, essentially the person that he had walked out on many, many years ago. And he, of course, while there, gets drawn into this conflict and finds himself caught right in the middle of this whole conflict. His life is in danger. He's at risk. He's getting attacked from all sides, essentially. But he's on his own. He's not with his crew, his family. He's not with the Rocinante. And then, of course, we got Amos, who has to head back to Earth because he's heard someone he cares about has passed away, and so he's gone back to Earth to pay his respects. But while on Earth, of course, he is there when an attack comes to Earth. And again, I'm going to leave it vague about what that attack is, lest you haven't read the books. I don't want to get into spoilers, but he's there and he manages to survive. And of course, society on Earth is breaking down into this tribalistic, free-for-all, no government, no laws, anarchy type nature. So Amos has to survive after rescuing someone he now essentially considers a friend from prison, and their adventure and their survival to get through the chaos that has erupted on Earth and escape the planet once again. So Amos is trying to deal with that on his own, again, without his family from the Rocinante. With that, Naomi, she has to go into the belt. She has to go and rescue and try to mitigate a situation that's come up with her past in the belt. With the Outer Planets Alliance. So she has left the Rocinante as well to go deal with that on her own. She doesn't tell James Holden what's going on because she doesn't want him to get involved, and she knows he will if she says anything. And then, of course, Holden is stuck there with the Rocinante on his own. He's trying to get the ship repaired, get it back up and running the way it was before after all the stresses and battles and everything that came before. And he's just trying to survive as well. But of course, the Rocinante has become a danger trap itself due to everything that's happened and everything that is happening. So again, trying to leave it vague so there's no spoilers. So essentially, this is a story about reuniting with our past. It's a story about confronting those things which are most challenging for us to confront, and doing it on our own and alone, as we sometimes are in life, having to face these threats separate from those that we care about, and not being able to have that support network behind us, and how each individual character of the crew of the Rocinante is challenged with this and having to face it independently and on their own as they struggle for survival. And then, of course, towards the end, it all comes back together as the crew's reunited towards the end. And it's just so well done. Up until now, it said it's been the crew's in it together, they're all together, and they're surviving, they work together. But how do they deal with that independently? How do they deal with these threats to their existence, their life, and everything? How do they deal with that separately and survive? And just leading back to what I was saying about watching the final episode last night of The Expanse, there's this one scene that I absolutely loved in this book, and I thought it was done really, really well in the TV show, albeit there were some differences about how it played out. I think it was still done really, really well. And it has a scene with Naomi when she's rescued towards the end. And I just, again, I'm trying to leave it spoiler free, but I can say that I really loved how that was done in the TV show and how that played out in the TV show. And I loved how that happened within this book. That scene was just so amazing and so awesome. Just everything about it was just so good. And I loved the way it was portrayed, and just I could imagine having to go through what Naomi went through in this book. And I think her storyline, her story arc is the most difficult, it's the most heart-wrenching, and the most provocative, I guess, scene or storyline within this book, and the way she has to deal with it. And of all the characters, hers is the most emotionally charged storyline. And I can't even imagine what it would be like to be in her situation. And I don't necessarily mean literally out in space fighting on spaceships, you know, type of situation. I mean, just having to deal with the interdynamics of familial relations that she had to deal with within this storyline was just so well done, and I absolutely love that about this book. And The Expanse in general, as I said, is definitely become, if I had to pick a favorite science fiction story of all time, I think at this point I'd probably go with The Expanse. I'm absolutely loving every bit of it, start to finish. Everything. This book does not disappoint. It is absolutely amazing. Book 5 of The Expanse, Nemesis Games. I think that this title really portrays the book so well, because each one of our characters is basically caught in this situation where they're having to play these games with their nemesis to try to stay one step ahead of them and try to survive without each other. So when all said and done, just fantastic read. If you haven't read The Expanse, I highly recommend that you do so, because this really is such a good series. I cannot stress that enough. I'm loving this book series, and I'm loving the TV show. I can't wait to see season 6 of The Expanse. It is just, everything is just so good about this, and I highly recommend The Expanse. If you haven't already read it, check it out. This is a great series of books. Best science fiction series that I have read thus far, and I am so glad I picked it up. So those are my thoughts on Nemesis Games by James S.A. Corey. Have you read this book series? If you have, let me know what you think below. As always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for tuning in. And, you know, join me over on the Discord, join me over on Instagram. We can have a great chat about this and many other books. So thank you so much for watching again, and until next time, on reading. Bye.